They did not see it coming. That is a quote from how one expert on the Mueller probe is describing Donald Trump's legal team's reaction at this hour. Trump's lawyers certainly looked surprised because over the past few days, they were publicly boasting that Manafort was still on their team. Rudy Giuliani touting coordination with Manafort's lawyers and even telling reporters they had an active joint defense agreement. We have an open communication with them, he told Politico this week, providing a better idea of what's going to happen. Or not, since they clearly didn't know this was going to happen. And it's a long ways from back in the day, just a month ago, when Trump would be tweeting a defense of Manafort and his lawyers would welcome it the same day.
Mr. Downing, what was your reaction to the president today?
I'm very happy to hear from the president and that he's supporting Mr. Manafort.
But today, Manafort's lawyers was hearing from Mueller's prosecutors who gathered in 2 rows in court, shaking hands, you can see it there in the sketches, on another guilty plea. Now, a new question tonight is whether the facts just changed quickly or whether Manafort's side was actively duping his former boss at the White House. And that brings us back to the blindsiding point. That reporter I just quoted is Josh Marshall. He follows this case closely and is reporting, quote, "It seems clear Giuliani and his team were duped too. They did not see it coming." Back with me at the table here, counsel Maya Wiley. What do you make of Rudy Giuliani touting a joint defense agreement this past week, which we now know was happening at the very time Paul Manafort was in the meetings, not jointly defending Trump, but rather cutting a deal with his nemesis, Bob Mueller?
Well, you know, I have so many questions about how Giuliani has been approaching this from the beginning. He's made so many mistakes in his representation of Trump in public, include whether it's unfortunate statements about how he has described transactions. He's been a mess. So I wonder if they have a written agreement, because it's standard operating procedure to write the agreement down. Normally, you would include provisions about how the agreement could be dissolved, and it would be common practice to dissolve the agreement if you were going to start, if one party was going to start cooperating. So was it written? Was he relying on an informal and verbal agreement, which everyone would say you don't do? I don't know. It's impossible to know because he shouldn't be blindsided. So the only thing you can figure out is either events move so rapidly, which is possible, that they were blindsided that way, or Giuliani was flying by the seat of his pants and wasn't really actually lawyering up the way you should, with a very clear agreement, with very clear provisions on how you handle it if your interests are no longer aligned.
Right, and you're making 2 key points there. One, although you have provided analysis that is critical of Donald Trump, you are making a point in fairness to him, which is in a fair joint defense agreement, he should have some notice about what's going to happen. That's why it's an agreement. But 2, you're speaking to the limits of a presidency that is governed sometimes exclusively by spin or by the 4 corners of a TV appearance in the case of Mr. Giuliani. Because you can have a TV appearance that sounds good but is actually substantively bad if you don't know what you're doing, are lying, or are misleading everybody in a way that blows up in your face. That's what just happened with Giuliani, which again goes to the fact that you can claim whatever you want, but then there's the proof in court. With that in mind, I want to compare another Trump-friendly lawyer, because it's interesting to hear from Mr. Dershowitz, who has made all sorts of claims, including that maybe obstruction isn't a crime when the president does it. But he, too, said tonight's one of those nights where there's no other way to look at it but a victory for Mueller. Take a look.
If he's given a pardon, then he can't take the Fifth Amendment. He would have to testify anyway. He could be called in front of a grand jury. I think from the point of view of Mueller, this is a big win. This is a big gain because he gets access to somebody.
Maya?
Yeah, absolutely. I won't agree with Mr. Dershowitz on many things, but I'll agree on that point. This is a huge victory. The fact that Rudy Giuliani actually had a tweet out there referencing Manafort telling the truth. They've actually have a public statement actually supporting his credibility as he's going to proffer a lot of facts to Robert Mueller. What they're going to do is try to attack his credibility because that's about all they'll have. And they have a public statement from Donald Trump's attorney out on Twitter saying that Paul Manafort will tell the truth. That's called really bad lawyering.
Right, and they're trying to walk that back tonight just as they've tried to walk back the joint defense agreement, which again raises the more metaphysical question about Mr. Giuliani's TV lawyering, which is, what is it? Maya Wiley, my thanks to you as always. We're back in 30 seconds.